All right, welcome back. Nothing Near Post fam. College season's ended. PLL's in full swing. But with the NNP being the news source of the sport, we're still coming at you with the best lacrosse content available. And because of that, this week, NNP is excited to have an Ohio State boys lacrosse champion, a 300-point scorer in college at Claremont McKenna College, a 3-time MCLA All-American, a WCLL Player of the Year, a 2-time ECAC champion as a coach, a Big East champion as a coach, 3-time NCAA Division I Final Four participant, former head coach of the Thailand national team for the 2014 World Championships, an MLL alum with the Outlaws, current Waterdogs offensive coordinator, current head coach at WRA, and most importantly, a father to a young son. Welcome to the Nothing Near Post Show, Coach Dylan Sheridan.
What's up, my man? Thank you so much for having me. And when you reel that stuff off, it makes me sound a lot older and more important than I actually am. So I appreciate you.
No, that's not true. You're as important as they get. First off, happy belated Father's Day.
Thank you.
Were you able to get home to the little guy on Sunday, or no? You had an early flight. Or no, you got home on Sunday, yeah?
I did. I got home and to an empty house. My wife and son were in San Diego visiting my parents / recruiting for my wife's coaching gig.
Nice. All right. So Father's Day to do whatever you wanted to do.
No doubt. Catch up on some sleep.
Great. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining. Really excited for this conversation. Just with your diverse background in the sport, I think it's really cool to grab you and talk about sort of the different lenses you're able to look at the game with. So I'm fired up about this. But I want to do a quick rewind because here at NNP, we never did an episode on the Final Four championship weekend, and that's my personal Super Bowl. But did you watch any of the action at Gillette Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I'm like you. I'm glued to that stuff. During training camp, your schedule is kind of hit or miss in terms of what you can catch and what you can't. But the PLL was and has been extremely generous to all the teams and leaves a block of time open for the national title. So it's kind of cool. You go into the Albany kind of primary gym, which has been remade into this makeshift tour stop with all the equipment and everything floating around. But on the big board, they have the game on 4 giant screens. And so you have guys from every team, different allegiances, certainly, to different teams, but watching the game together, and it's a pretty cool environment.
Love it. I'm curious, with your time at Pfeiffer, were you dialed into the D2 game at all? Did you see the timeout that J.B. Clark called at the end of that one?
I did, and so 2 things there. One, my heart goes out to Coach Clark. I mean, I think we've all been there, totally. and maybe not at those, certainly not at those stakes, but we've all called a timeout maybe at an opportune time. So it can kind of feel some hurt for him and his boys. But I also had one of my kids here from WRA starts for Tampa and was a first-team All-American this year. So I had, I was invested in the Spartans, and unfortunately, that didn't go our way.
Just gut-wrenching, man. Do you have like a philosophy on that? Are you a let them play, or are you a call the timeout sort of big picture-wise, other than without seeing sort of the play develop?
I am committed to a let them play mentality, and it's bitten me in the butt more times than I can care to remember. But I don't think I can deviate from it. If we're doing the right stuff in practice, it's like, you got to let the plays happen.
Totally. Well, speaking of let the plays happen, I want to turn our attention to your playing career. Claremont McKenna, 3-time MCLA All-American, and when I was doing some research, 4-year member of the football team and a film studies major. Like, were we chopping it up Spielberg style? What was the football career? Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So I actually was a psychology major with leadership kind of infusion. And because I played both sports, I was one of the few kids out of school that didn't travel abroad for a semester. So I was able to get through my major pretty quickly. And being in LA and surrounded by that kind of environment, film studies, it was interesting. It was available, and I dove into it. So it was pretty cool. Learned a lot. And some of the technical stuff, about editing, I should say, really actually translated well early in my coaching career when I was cutting film. So that was actually pretty cool. It's probably the only thing that I used, from school in my career, but really neat transition.
Are you still like are you a movie nut? Like, are you a guy that can rip off a movie and talk about the score and talk about the terrible acting here, but great, line there type deal, delivery, all that kind of jazz?
Oh yeah, definitely into it. And it's interesting, like the evolution of television, because things have kind of like maybe hit the skids at the movie theater in recent years, but television and streaming has really allowed for like some pretty amazing work. So I just finished The Landman. You should absolutely check that one out. It's a great show.
All right, The Landman. We'll put it on the list. Now, what about football? What position do we play? Played all 4 years. What's the...
Yeah, my football career had a little bit of a rocky start. I came in as a corner, and I did not have the wheels for that at the college level, especially in the West Coast where everybody was airing it out. So bumped to strong safety and grew into it. Starter, at the end of my career, and played special teams all 4 years. And actually, it's kind of interesting. The guy who was in front of me at strong safety was the long snapper. And so, obviously you model yourself after the guy whose job you're trying to ultimately, fill. And so I became a long snapper as well. So got to do that for a couple of years, which someone of my stature, that was pretty unique, but it was a lot of fun. And until teams figured out that they had to cover me up on punts, which is about halfway through the season, I was able to get down there and make some pretty cool tackles. So that was fun.
That's great. Strong little Cooper DeJean in you, huh? You were Cooper DeJean before Cooper DeJean?
Yeah, I wasn't covering much in pass coverage, but I come up and put my nose on somebody.
There you go. Love it. Cool. And then the last thing, sort of covering your background that I want to touch on, I want to set the record straight about your relationship or responsibilities in the MLL. The way I understand it, you played for 3 years. And was that coming out of college, or was that a little bit later on? Because I believe, from my research, it looks like you won a title with the Outlaws in 2014. But I'm just trying to put all the pieces together.
Yeah, that's extremely generous in my bio there. I was on the practice squad for the Outlaws for 3 years. Coach Seaman and then Coach Stagnita, who I still see on every weekend now with the Whip Snakes, were gracious enough to give me that opportunity. I coached at DU, so they didn't have to pay for me to travel in or anything. And I knew a bunch of guys on the team and would train with them throughout the year, at least the ones that were local to Denver. So I think it was more of a favor, and I could just be a tackling dummy, so to speak. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I got to meet great people and build some unbelievable friendships. And at that point in time, the Outlaws were really, the class of the MLL. They had undefeated season, which honestly I think they fell short in the championship, but and then followed it up with a championship season the year after. So really cool to be a part of that winning culture. And pro lacrosse is just different. It's different than college. So seeing it from a different lens, I obviously had the DU lens, which was awesome, but seeing it, done at a high level in a different way.
Cool. Shit, dude, we all gotta roll, and you need everybody. So certainly. No shame in that. Cool. Let's take it to Western Reserve. You're an O2 grad yourself, now the head ball coach. Straight up, what does it mean to you to coach at your alma mater?
That's a great question. I think it's for anybody that loves the sport, you can trace back kind of the origins. Like, where did it start for you? Where did when did you fall in love? How did you fall in love? Who gave you your first stick? And I can trace that right back to like 100 yards from where I'm sitting right now. So for me, that is a unique relationship that I have with the game that's really given me my whole life at this point. And so I'm back and I'm able to work with kids and hopefully help them cultivate that same relationship with the game, but also use that, leverage, so to speak, to get them to expand some of their interests and maybe look at education and some of the extracurriculars in a different way and help them grow as people. And we built a pretty nice little program here, and hopefully we'll continue to have success. But more than anything, it's just seeing guys walk in the same hallways, wear the same uniform, and experience some of the same, teachers and classes, and just helping them kind of guide them through it, and watching them then go on to college and hopefully life and be huge successes. It's just it's a treat.
Totally. And I mean, same uniform, at least you guys are outfitted now in the adrenaline thread, so a little bit different, but had to give a shout out to those guys. But I think you make an interesting point. Built a pretty good program. I'd say you're underselling it, quite honestly, which is awesome, and the humility is great. But I mean, you took over when WRA was ranked 1600th in the nation, and now we've got a top 10 ranking for the program. First off, unbelievable job. But what do you think are some big reasons for such a significant jump under your leadership?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for recognizing that. I think the biggest, I can point to a lot of things, right? I think, one, you have to have ambition, right? You have to set a high bar and then strive for it. You have to have institutional support, which I have. I'm head of school that played lacrosse, and she loves the game. And she's funny, she'll come to all the games, and she knows enough about lacrosse to give me some feedback, which is always great. She's like, I think you're clear here. I'm like, I thought you actually are watching this thing. But most importantly, it's the kids, right? And if you look back to that first kind of quote unquote recruiting class, it had guys like Ryan Favreau, who now plays a significant role at Colgate, and Blake Island, who now plays a significant role at Ohio State, and Ty Banks, who's having an unbelievable career at Georgetown. And I can go down the list. I mean, those kids came in, bought in, worked year round. And that's one of the other things that I probably neglected to mention, was that we can go all year here. But they worked year round for years, 2-3 years, to build a foundation. And so I credit much of our success to them. And for all the kids that have followed, there's now a foundation and a kind of a formula to follow to be successful. So really grateful for those boys and their families for kind of taking the leap of faith. Like you mentioned, we were not very good coming out of COVID. And so it took a lot of trust in those folks to come here and see the vision and then work real hard to make it happen.
Totally. And this is just an offshoot from that. Is there something you look for when you're recruiting guys at WRA? Is there a chance to sort of identify, other than being a great lacrosse player, is there something else that Ty Banks had, that Favreau had, that you were like, yes, this is a guy that's going to help sort of turn this, I don't want to say turn this thing around, but put this in a direction that I'm going to be proud of as an alum and a new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to quantify it, but sometimes you meet people and you're like, wow, that kid is just a winner. It's like you gravitate to them. They're high character, humble, super talented, and you're like, those kids are just winners. And they're the kind of kids that you're okay losing with. You don't want to lose. Certainly, I don't think anybody ever goes into a game being like, I'm setting out to lose. But if you do, and ultimately most of us do, right? There are very few undefeated seasons. You're good with that. You kind of know what those kids are made of, and they'll get right back to work, and they're not going to be satisfied with it. So I'm looking for that. And, obviously this is a unique place. It's small. There's only roughly 400 kids. So being community oriented, I think, is really important. Being someone that, like I said, you enjoy being around. As a coach, I enjoy being around them, but other folks in the campus community enjoyed their presence in the classroom or in the dorms. And so just looking for those kids that are just kind of innately winners, and doing my best to put them in positions where they can be successful.
Totally. And I think I want to go back to, again, top 10 program right now, and a little bit of a recruiting spiel, I hope, and people listening will hear this. But when you say year round, I don't usually think about Ohio being a year round place. What do we got? A beautiful indoor facility? Do we grid it out in sort of a hard surface track type of deal and just let the boys go to work? What's the setup?
Yeah, great question. So we're lucky. We actually just recently and this is a newer development. So those guys I mentioned did not have the benefit of this, but we just finished a lacrosse only facility, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then in the wintertime, we have a field house, so we can go in there and play some box lacrosse and do some sixes and some modified stuff. And then, in the fall, we have essentially what amounts to like a Division I fall ball. And then in spring, we're out and we're in season. So it's kind of a 3-season full academic year model. That's relatively new. It only started after my first year back here, and has allowed for the development of these kids to just kind of like expedite. Like, it's crazy. They're getting, kids everywhere are getting just unbelievably good at lacrosse, but we're fortunate because we have so many opportunities to train together.
Well, and I think, not only for WRA to be successful, but for those guys to be successful when they step foot on whatever campus it is that they find themselves, if lacrosse is going to be part of their college experience. I'm really excited to see the Roach kid play at UMass next year. I got to believe he's going to get some burn as a midfielder personally, but you know him better than me, haven't been around him for the last calendar year. But guys like that, Ty Banks has been a contributor at Georgetown since he stepped on campus. So clearly something's going on, and if you're a guy that wants to be impactful and play college lacrosse right away, it sounds like it's a great landing spot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, these kids are coming in having already lived the student-athlete experience, on their own, away from their folks, being pushed by a quote-unquote college coach.
You're more than quote-unquote college coach. You got the resume, which we'll go over right after you answer this, all right?
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, they've already lived it, right? And in some cases, we may be trained more than what the NCAA allows. So that this is actually building those muscles for them so that they'll be ready to handle that rigor when they get to the next level.
I just hope we got enough net minders. I hope those goalies aren't taking freaking rubber 3 seasons, and we got on guys. Yeah.
We're big tennis ball guys.
All right, here. Good. Take care of those guys. All right, we're meat tenderizers sometimes, but not 3 seasons a year. All right. Cool. No, I think that's awesome. Let's talk about that coaching career that you had mentioned, or you as a quote-unquote college coach, which is BS. But for the NNP fam, I'm going to walk down sort of what I believe to be your coaching resume here. Started at Pfeiffer University, then to St. Mary's College, the Gales in California on the women's side, Lebanon Valley College, Denver University, Princeton University, kicked off and started from scratch, from nothing, the Cleveland State University Vikings program, Ohio State University, and now currently at Western Reserve, wrapping up your 5th season and in the midst of your 2nd season with the Philadelphia Waterdogs. Did we get all that? Did I miss anything? Miss any stops?
Outside of Thailand and Puerto Rico, which I'm proud to be affiliated with both programs. You nailed it.
Cool. Now, let's. In somewhat of a chronological order, I've got a few questions here that I'd love to get your thoughts on, and I'd love to touch on all of them. We'd be here for a long time, but quickly, I'm going to put you on the spot with one. During your year at Lebanon Valley, Leb Val as some call it, any chance you remember the top defensive recruit that you landed but never got to coach?
Ooh, there's a couple good ones. There's a kid, Lanigan, who ended up being really good. I want to say he went to Connecticut High School.
Okay.
And then Kruder, another one, really, really good. His sister also played lacrosse at Lebanon Valley. They were both really, really good players.
That's awesome. Kruder and I are tight, so I put you on the spot there, see if you could come up with them. But that's cool. He had a hell of a career from what I was looking up with Kruder, so you clearly got that one right. And speaks to your abilities in the recruiting game too. He spoke highly of your recruiting abilities, so that was cool. Let's jump to your time in the Centennial State. All right, so you're at DU 2011. What was your path in responsibilities during your tenure with the Pios? Just sort of, because I know you came in, I believe, as the volunteer spot, but some people know, some people don't, that volunteer spot is a full-time spot anyway. and then you worked your way up to a couple of different roles, I think, during your tenure there, which I believe was 4 years. But can you kind of walk us through your path while in Denver?
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's funny because I was just kind of reliving this with Alex Stathakis this over the weekend, just talking about some former DU faceoff guys and how great they were. So I came in as the volunteer, as you mentioned, was tasked with the faceoff unit. Former attackman, no formal training / any knowledge of really the faceoff game. And then in addition to that, my role was really working with the Denver Elite programs. That kind of paid the bills for me, and I was fortunate to have that opportunity. Field, box, and honestly, in addition to coaching Denver, the reps I got coaching with Denver Elite, I credit a ton of my experience to that, just because you're coaching every single day. So I dove in. I went and I called up some people that I thought knew a lot more about faceoffs than me, and they were gracious enough to spend time with me. I spent a week with John Basti, who I know you're friends with, and Basti was really generous and shared a time with me and Coach Lawrence up there when he was at Hartford. Spent a bunch of time with Jerry Raganese, Chris Mattis, Greg Grenlian. Really just those. I mean, it's just true of the lacrosse community, but they were just so willing to share knowledge and learned a ton about facing off, and was very fortunate. And this is a player that most people at this point in time don't recognize the name, but if you were around back then, you would. Chase Carrero was an electric midfielder at Denver, and also happened to be our face-off guy. So we had our first line Nitty that took draws, and he was going into his sophomore year when I showed up, so I got to coach him for kind of the better part of his career. And he made me look really smart, right? Like, the guy was just a freak athlete, so talented. And so he did a great job. And that kind of helped me obviously look a lot better than maybe I was. As my career was kind of going on there were some changes to the staff. And, I got this, I shared an office no bigger than this one with Brownie for like 4 years. So I learned a ton about offense, and he's just one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. With regard to offensive scheme. But what that did was it allowed me to learn how to coach defense a lot better too, because you're always thinking about it from the other side. So eventually I got to run that side of the ball at Denver. Loved it. I had a great experience there. Princeton came calling. My wife grew up in Princeton, and so we made the move. But Denver's an unbelievable place, and I probably would have never left otherwise.
All right, quick follow-up. So you're running the defense under the legendary Bill Tierney, who is credited a lot of times with creating slide and recover defense. How were those conversations when there might have been a slight disagreement in maybe scheme or game plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's two things there. One, and it worked out this way, actually, ironically, but his motto back then was, the first year it's mine, second year is ours, and the third year it's yours, right? And that's kind of how it played out, to be honest with you. But I remember being maybe my first or second year, so I was still real green, going into his office, and I had some drill, between you and me, it was probably something very basic that we've all seen a million times, but I thought at the time this was like innovative, right? So I bring it to him, I show it on the whiteboard, and he's like, that is a great drill. And he's like, as honest, like true expression as you could imagine. That is a great drill. When I invented that drill in 1980, whatever year it was, he was like, yeah. And I was like, I just stopped, shut my mouth, closed my notebook, and then walked out of the office. I was like, all right, great. So what's old is new, I guess, is the best way to characterize that.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, I guess during that time that you were at DU, you guys made 3 runs to the NCAA Final Four. Let's put the coach speak away and sort of, what was your favorite memory from any of those trips off the field?
Oh man, there's so many good ones. I think there was a season where we played in like 7 NFL venues, and that doesn't happen anymore. Like, you just don't see that in college lacrosse. But it was a kind of a commonplace during those times, and just going from like one to the next, it was just kind of like, this is surreal, like I'm coaching lacrosse and I'm we're at Lucas Oil or we're at M&T, and it's just like, this is unbelievable. And then the pregame meals, you know, when you're on staff with Coach Brown, right? Food is a very important piece of the culture of the program. So some of the pregame meals were awesome. And honestly, it's just the relationships, right? Like I look back and I was on the phone with Coach Bates this morning. You know, it's just these relationships are lifelong. And so that part of it's been really cool. You know, I obviously regret never having kind of won one, get to that mountaintop 3 times. And you start to think that you're going to be there every year. And the reality is that's not how this works. But it was nice to see that, like, Baptiste comes in and they get over the hump the next year. And I was there for it. So it was cool.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the feeling watching? I believe it was 2015, right? Mm-hmm. What was the feeling watching that?
Oh, I mean, just satisfaction, just immense satisfaction. Obviously, just gratitude that I was able to be a part of that, that building process, because it was so much bigger than just that one team. Although those guys are obviously champions forever, it was big for the sport, big for the University of Denver and just the growth of the game. So being a kid from a non-traditional area, took a lot of pride in that.
Cool. Yeah, sometimes I think about it when I got out. They won the Boston University won the Patriot League the next year, and it feels like all they needed was just me to get out of the way, and they go execute. Not bring up those old drills that Coach Tierney dreamed up from 1980 something. That's great. So 7 NFL venues. Can you name
It was
them?
wild, man. It was wild. We were in Jacksonville at Jaguar Stadium.
Playing who?
We played. So we actually went there a couple times. It was called the Moe's Classic.
Yes.
So we played Penn State one year. We played Ohio State another year. So that was really cool. Jaguar Stadium, the Broncos Stadium. We had I can't remember. I think it was like a chocolate company or something sponsored that weekend. Played Duke there. I played Duke one year, and I think Notre Dame another. So those two, we were at Ravens. We were at Eagles. Trying to think of the others. There was a handful. It was really cool and surreal. I mean, the one at Lucas Oil was probably my favorite because it was just such a unique place to be, and the game itself was just legendary. We were down, I think 6. We were down 5 or 6 at halftime. Wes Berg is like a sophomore or freshman. And we as coaches, we gather before going into the locker room to kind of talk about what we need to fix. And when we get into the locker room, Westberg is like on a table. And I won't use the language, but he was giving it to the guys like, we are not going to lose. And this is a young kid. And we basically just turned around, walked right back out of the locker room and let Wes do his thing. And then the boys came back and we beat Carolina and moved on to the Final Four.
That's unreal. That's so cool. That buy-in and the accountability to let a player do that's great. All right, going from NFL stadiums to Cleveland, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You end up doing that year at Princeton, then you get the head coaching job at Cleveland State. You get back to Ohio. I believe it was 2016, so you got no team. What was your favorite memory from that 2016, 2017, having no team? What was your favorite memory from sort of building to that first roster?
Oh, there's so many. One, I mean, obviously I had my right-hand man at the time, who's now the head coach, Andy German. Going to work every day with that guy was like the best, the absolute best. And to do it for 4 years, but obviously to do it with no team, it was just him and I. It was awesome. We took a trip out to Rhode Island. We visited with Coach Tiffany at Brown and Coach Daly at Tufts. And that was really formative for us because I think, I give Andy a ton of credit for kind of having the vision of the style of play that we needed to adopt in order to be successful at CSU. And we stole a lot from those two guys, and they were gracious enough to host us. So that was a memory. Being in Cleveland, I mean, LeBron James was King James, right? Like we won the finals that year. The Tribe went to the World Series. Maybe the next year we lost to the Cubs, but downtown Cleveland was electric. It was just a really special time, and quite frankly, a relatively easy sell for kids because Cleveland was buzzing. So we had some great kids decide to come on board and help us lift the program off.
So, okay, if a trip to Rhode Island is one, Rhode Island and Tufts is one. You said Cavaliers NBA championship is 2. Coach German's wedding day. Well, you have 3 recruits on campus. That's got to be 3.
Yeah, that was the trifecta day. That was special. Yeah, 3 for 3. All 3 recruits committed, and then we head to the courthouse and they tied the knot. So that was pretty epic. Yeah, there were some hilarious recruiting stories just from those days that I'll keep between German and I, but just an awesome year. We were young, it was like I was a newlywed. He was just getting married. It was before we had kids, and it was just a fun time to be growing as people and to have a great friend there to do it with was awesome.
Totally. Now let's take a step forward. Does the date April 29th, 2017 mean anything to you?
April 29th, 2017. You gotta help me out with that one.
I believe the Vikes played Detroit Mercy that day, last game of the season.
Yeah, first Division I win.
There you go.
First Division I win. That was unbelievable. It's starting a Division I program is an endeavor, and there's a handful of guys out there that have done it. And doing it as like a 30 or 31-year-old in your home city was surreal. And to get that win, they had taken the bubble down, so Cleveland, the whole downtown Cleveland skyline was right there, and kids played really well that day. We took it to them.
Yeah, it was like 15-6 or something like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. And, I credit the guys, obviously, for sticking with it all season. But we played some really tough teams. I mean, we played Virginia, Duke, Michigan, Ohio State. So, it wasn't a shocker to me that they grew up quickly over the course of that season. And it was just nice to finish it with a win.
I can only imagine what the locker room and what campus was like that night. That sounds awesome. All right, if we're doing this dates thing, how about 2019? Your last. Well, actually, hold on. Let's pause. Locker room was probably awesome. Coach's room was probably a hell of a time that night too. Finally getting the weight off your shoulders.
It was great. It was unbelievable. The funny thing is, we had the team banquet the next morning. So yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. But the boys rallied. I had Coach Bernlohr on staff at that point as well. So the boys rallied, and I think between the kids on the team, the coaches, and the parents, the level of happiness was off the charts. So I probably could have said anything in my speech, but it was just a great event for everybody.
Hell of a way to put a bow on a year that you probably want to forget 90% of for sure. 2019, all right, your last year with the Vikes. From what I could find, you guys were the best statistically riding, you were statistically the best riding team in the country. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say it was the scheme, but no, it was just we recruited the guys that fit to that style of play, and so it was the guys. We had some, I'll say, quote unquote, undersized poles that were really fast with good feet and tough as nails. We had really good short stick deep middies that were multi-sport athletes from non-traditional areas, but they were, more than capable athletically. And we had some attackmen that were just relentless. So, you have the right guys in place, and you can kind of do anything. And riding was something we wanted to hang our hat on. So riding and early offense were areas that we felt like we could be successful. So we dedicated a ton of time to it in practice, and it was really cool to see them be able to take that quote unquote statistical championship with them, because we were honest about where we were as a program. We weren't going to compete for a championship. We weren't part of a league, but we could be number one in something. And if riding is that, if that's your calling card, I think that says a lot about your program culturally.
Totally. I mean, can we talk about the scheme a little bit? Like,
Sure.
were we drop? Were we one chase? Were we bumping? Were we 10-man? Like, what were we doing?
Yeah, it was a zone 10 man. And hey, look, I'll be the first to admit we were definitely helped with the bubble.
Throw the ball up into the white.
So it's a little dark in there. The lighting's not great, and so you throw the 10 man in that atmosphere where you can barely hear anything because it's so loud. Even if there's only 1,000 people, it created chaos. And honestly, with where we were as a program at that time, chaos is exactly where we wanted to live.
That's awesome. That was going to be a follow up. If you were going to be a 10-man guy or not. So it sounds like we definitely are.
All the time. Yeah. Even here at Reserve, we 10-man consistently.
I love that.
Which is funny because I came up under Coach T, as you mentioned. And when I was coaching at Denver, we were statistically the worst riding team in the NCAA.
Well, yeah, because you can't give up anything. You got to make sure that you get in the hole, get our six behind the ball, and let's slide recover. It's what we work on every day.
Right. So, and it made sense, certainly, when you have an offensive coordinator like Brownie and the efficiency and the athletes they had. And then it didn't make sense when you don't have those guys. So you got to find a different way to win.
Totally. Now, I want to stay in the X's and O's world. With you having college experience, with you having MLL experience, PLL experience, some time on the women's side in college, and now in the PLL, what are some nuances of the PLL game that sort of, from scheme X's and O's, that sort of like are top of mind for you going into a weekend or building out your playbook, if you will, as you're coordinating the Waterdogs offense?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So you really kind of, it's almost like what you would imagine college basketball to pro basketball, that transition is, you watch the NBA and it's like very matchup centric, everybody kind of runs the same stuff and it's just a matter, can you have guys that hit threes and then do your guys that are in the high pick and roll penetrate and get enough, defensive sag to hit those guys. In the PLL, it's similar. Everybody's running basically a similar version of the same offense, and it's so matchup oriented. And can you get matchup changes? If you do, what are you doing with those? If you have a guy like we have in Jake Taylor, you can really try to utilize that skill set, or Xander Dixon, or a Jay Carlson if you were the Whips a couple of years ago. Those are unique players that definitely change the way defenses are trying to approach guarding you. But it's really a lot of people doing a lot of the same stuff. And are your people able to win their matchup or not?
What if I spun the question a little bit, and this is going to lead into another question, but what's the most unique thing about the PLL from a rules perspective that that's top of mind for you when dialing stuff in? Is it, I don't want to lead you on, from a rules perspective, what's the most unique thing that comparatively to high school or college?
I mean, there's two things obviously that stand out. The 2-point arc can be a game changer, but I think what at least I realized, and maybe this is giving too much away, is I think you can't let the 2-point arc change your scheme or style too much, right? You can't get too worried about it. I mean, we won a game a couple of weeks ago, scored 16 1-point goals, right? Like, you don't need twos to win. Twos are nice. The other team had 3 twos and we still won. So I don't want to, overthink the 2-point arc too much. It's more important that you defend it. But I think the shot clock in the PLL is really the game changer. I mean, it is public enemy number one. As good as those defenses are and those goaltenders are in that league, which they're incredible, there's no better defender than, a 32-second shot clock off a face-off. It's like you literally have one crack at it, and then you better be able to sub appropriately. So, yeah, it's tough. But in a lot of ways, if you ask the players, I had just a great example anecdotally. Jimmy Freehill comes off after his first game, rookie year. He's like, that is the best version of lacrosse I've ever played. Everybody should play that all the time. And as a coach, you're sitting there like, I'm going to no comment. But as a player, obviously, they love it. So it's pretty cool to be a part of that.
Totally. Freehill. I mean, to go back to the shot clock, the 32, if I recall correctly, it was a reaction to the face-off being, quote-unquote, too much of an advantage, or it skewed the possession numbers too much. But that's why then, as long as we as coaches know what the rules and parameters are that we're playing in, you get a guy like Zach Courier, put him on the wing, and he can stay and play, and you've only got a sub 2 instead of 3, right? Like, just as long as we know the parameters that we need to play in, you can always adapt. But I agree, like the 32-second shot clock is, I mean, the guys who broadcast, there's an over-under on like 97.5 how many times they mention it during a broadcast, but it certainly is impactful, and it's interesting to hear you say that, because it could have just been us as viewers, but it's a real thing, and it's on people's minds, huh?
Oh, it's crazy fast, man. When you're down there on the field in those games, it is crazy fast. Even just the 52 feels pretty rushed, but obviously that's coming from somebody that has coached with a lot more control. So it does take a lot of control out of the coach's hands, but you're putting it in the hands of the best players in the world. So it's rightfully so, and it makes for a really fun brand of lacrosse.
Totally. Now, in that same vein, Jimmy Freehill thinks it's the best version. Seems like you enjoy coaching it for whatever reason, the players at the highest level, the different rules, whatever the case might be. I've had some conversations with lacrosse guys about rule changes that we'd like to see in the college game. Having the experience that you have at all levels, what is 1 or 2 rules that you would change to the college game that you think would enhance it?
That's a great question. So there was a year, I think it was 2011, when a face-off guy violates, he had to run off the field. And so you as the team that gained possession had a momentary 6-on-5. And you could just run one off with him, or you could push and take advantage of that 6-on-5. I love that rule. I thought it was awesome. We had a couple set pieces that we used when we got those. I would take that rule one step further, and I would make the farthest wing guy of the violating team run off, just to get you an extra 1 Mississippi maybe. I think that would be amazing. And then your face-off guy has to actually stay and be a part of that 6-on-5. I think that would create a lot of excitement.
All right. Can I propose one to you and get your sense on it, since you're the statistically best riding coach in 2019?
Sure.
10-man ride. All the rage right now is clearing teams shooting the rock just to get out of pressure and backing it up, and what's a shot, what's not a shot. What if we workshopped, you and I, a way to define a shot, or at least make the shot a little bit more difficult to quote unquote take to bail you out of that clear? So, for example, in my head, it can't be a shot unless you're outside of your defensive box. Or do you extend it as far as the midline where you can't shoot it from? And have you ever workshopped something like that? Have you ever, over a couple beers, talked to the boys about beating the 10-man? Because you're obviously running it, so you're probably trying to poke holes in it all the time.
Yeah. So I actually had a great conversation with an officiating crew this spring, because obviously you have those pregame talks, and they're asking you, what should we look out for? And, as a team that is 10-manning, you don't want the other team to have the ability to just chuck it and get the ball. And one of the refs, I asked him the same question: how would you define a shot in that scenario? And he said, basically, imagine that there are football uprights behind the cage, right? If the ball goes through the uprights, I'm giving it to him as a shot. If it's outside of the uprights, that's a turnover. And I was like, you know what? I can live with that answer, right? So maybe on the safety netting behind everybody's goals, we just put a couple stripes, and the ball has to go between those uprights, and it counts as a shot. And if it doesn't, it's a turnover.
There's something about the field piece like getting, I mean, you take a 90-yarder, it bails out everything that the 10-man's built to do, right? The 10-man is built to condense the field a little bit so that your double teams and sort of the lanes that you're trying to create in the 10-man make it harder. But if they're pulling it from 10 yards above GLE, there's really not much you can do. And then it's up to the discretion of the official if it's a shot, and two, who's closer to the end line and they're busting tail from wherever they're positioned to that end line. So I don't know. I think there's something there with the 10-man. I think it'd be fun. I mean, the other piece, and I think International does this now. Actually, no, I think you have to touch in the box, but sort of making the midline more of an NBA basketball type of midline. Once you're over, you're over. No more of this under 60 type deal, but that gets difficult with the face-off. But I digress. You got my brain racing now, but I'm a huge 10-man guy too. I think that's awesome. All right, so it's the 6-on-5. That I think that was happening when I was playing. So that would have been like 2009, 2010 era.
Yeah, it was around that time. And I remember it fondly because we had Carrero at the face-off X, Cam Flint, and Jeremy Noble on each wing. So our whole first line midfield was out there for every face-off. So if you violated, we weren't subbing at all, and we could actually run plays off the draw.
Sure, that's great. So you're not looking to shorten the shot clock at all. You're not looking to put a 2-point arc into the college game. You're hell bent on the run them off so we can get more transition action.
I think it'd be awesome.
I love it.
And make face-off guys play defense.
I love it. All right. Last question, but I think it's going to be a more of a conversation from your side and sort of educating us a little bit. But with all with your stops along your career, can you give us a few tidbits into something you learned from each head coach you worked for, and stuff that kind of like stuck out to you that maybe people listening to this would be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to be more like that. Or a player is like, okay, that's what I should expect, or how I should be carrying myself. Or maybe it's just something as easy as, you show up to every meeting prepared type deal. Like, I'm not quite sure, but just kind of curious with you working in a variety of different places at a variety of different levels, if there's a few things of a few guys that just stick out to you.
Sure. I remember vividly, being right out of college and coaching at Pfeiffer. The gentleman that was the head coach there, his name was Jason Dombrowski. He's a Pfeiffer alum. And I'm, just really learning about X's and O's, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And I was just like, kind of, you could see the light bulb coming on for me, in the office. And he told me, lacrosse is a game that's wasted on the youth. And I'll never forget it, for a variety of reasons. But it's really interesting to think that, the older you get, the more nuanced the game becomes to you, that you learn all these different things schematically, and you didn't know any of them when you were playing, right? So I thought it was just an interesting kind of turn of phrase. At Lebanon Valley, Coach Hawes, he's a legend, right? Just an unbelievable guy. But I think what I learned most from him was just his commitment to work-life balance. And he has a beautiful family. And obviously his boys turned into pretty good lacrosse players. But his commitment to family was something that, as a young guy, I was like, okay, that's important. It's important. You got to keep that perspective. Coach T, look, you work with Coach T and Brownie. I basically was like in grad school trying to, get a master's in lacrosse, working with those guys, and just trying to keep up. But just watching how Coach T made everybody in the program feel so valued. He made our athletic trainers and academic support people feel like they were empowered members of our coaching staff, and I thought that was really special. Coach Bates at Princeton, I think he's probably one of the most underrated coaches in the modern lacrosse era. I just think he's so brilliant with the X's and O's, and like his infusion of box to field, just underappreciated how talented that guy is. And then, working with Germ, obviously, I think what you learn from an experience like that is how important it is to be around people you love and enjoy every day in your coaching staff, and that authentic like love for each other translates to the team and to the performance of the team. So that was really big. So like after that, like every assistant I brought in, or now the assistants of my staff at reserve, it's got to click, right? We've got to be able to gel from a kind of feng shui mentality, but like it's working, it's working, and I love the guys on my staff. And even when they move on and become head coaches or assistant coaches at other programs, it's like those friendships they're transcendent, right? So yeah, I've been really lucky to be around all those guys and learn from them. And I omitted Coach Myers and Coach Crane and those guys at Ohio State. Those guys were, Coach Myers, maybe above all, is a great person to model in terms of how to run an organization. Like, he is truly a CEO and masterful with how he handles working at a Power 5 school and just delegates, and his organizational skills are off the chart. So really impressive.
That's awesome. I think it's really neat that you sort of, and then you start to model yourself off of all of the good parts that you find from others, and you sort of make your own version of it, right? And having all those experiences that you have sort of makes you a little bit of who you are, I gotta believe.
No question. And look, there's some of those guys are like otherworldly talents, right? So there's nothing I'm going to ever do that compares or even can come close, but you can try and you can figure out a way that works for you. But I'll never be as organized or meticulous as Coach Myers, and I'll never be as, good of a people person as Coach T. It's just, these things are what they're their superpowers, but I recognize that, and I try to, aspire to be better and be the best version of it that I can be.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing all that. I think it's really cool insight. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. I think last thing that I want to end with, one, good luck against the Atlas this weekend. Can you give us just a little sneak peek into what a preparation week looks like from the coaching side of the PLL? Are we doing a scouting report? Is that got to be in on Wednesday? Sharing that? Can you give us a little peek into that world?
Well, a little bit of a unique deal for us because we came off the doubleheader, right? So last night we met with the team via Zoom and we covered those two games, so Boston and Denver. Obviously, we felt like we did a lot of things really well, but there's, it's early in the season, and quite frankly, we lost against Denver, so we got some room to improve. And then tomorrow night we'll meet and we'll go through the Atlas. We played the Atlas in our last game of the season last year. So we can kind of go back to that and look at some of the things that were helpful or beneficial. And there's new personnel on both teams and new coaches and all that stuff. So it will be different. But, just go into this one with kind of a fresh mindset. They're a conference opponent, so it's a big game for us. And, my family's going to be there, so I'm excited to play with them in the stands.
Saturday, 4:00. Looks like it's on ESPN. Down at Homewood Field. I'm fired up, and this is my own personal thing, but the Crease guys are, I think, I unfortunately don't think that youth lacrosse develops Crease guys as well as it needs to. We've got too much dodging and running by your guy. To watch Jake Taylor and Xander Dixon go to work this weekend against each other, probably going to try to one-up each other, I think is going to be electric television, not only because of what they're capable of doing, but because of what the guys throwing them the rock are capable of doing, because they're not getting open on their own a little bit. Maybe they'll rub off a screen, or they'll lull somebody to sleep and then cut to open space, or use some eye deception as far as where they want their feet if a slide isn't drawn. But I don't know about you, but I love watching those inside guys, and I think as an offensive coordinator, it's always great to have that type of luxury of a guy you can stuff it into his face mask. He's going to make some play happen.
Yeah, it definitely changes the way you coach, in a positive way. It's you give those guys a lot more freedom, and rightfully so. And in doing that, they can basically unlock the players around them. So not only are they menacing in the crease and doing their thing, but they're unlocking all their teammates' kind of abilities as well. So it's really cool to watch.
I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say full circle, but it kind of wraps us back to when you were starting at Cleveland State. You went to go watch Tufts practice and Brown, and they always had some type of crease presence. And when I was at Bowdoin, it felt like they were just manufacturing them in some old decrepit warehouse in Medford. And just whenever one graduated, they had another one to stuff it in there. So, and it's part of what made them really impossible to beat. So, really cool. But Coach Sheridan, I appreciate the time. Anything you want to shout out? You working on anything outside of WRA and the Waterdogs?
The next thing for me is Team Puerto Rico. Working with those guys again. Coach Foster up at UMass and I are going to head down to Puerto Rico in December. The first ever lacrosse event taking place down there on the island. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And really just looking forward to a great summer with the Dogs.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate the time with NNP here. Best of luck on Saturday and going forward. And, yeah, man, again, thanks so much.
Thanks, Max. Take care, man.
See ya.